All right, everyone, hello, and thank you for joining me about what you will need to get started. In this training, I'm hoping to build confidence in you starting your very own first homebrew of kombucha. I know it can be a little bit intimidating at first, thinking of growing this weird, monstrous thing into a beverage that you can eat. I mean, it kind of looks disgusting, but believe it or not, it is good. It is good for you. It's got probiotics. And I'm just really excited to share with you guys what you're gonna need to get started in order for you to feel comfortable enough to start your very first homebrew. So if y'all want to turn to your second page on the little handout I gave to you, and we will get started. So don't let it intimidate you. As I said earlier, it can be very intimidating. I know I was intimidated. It took me about 6 months before I actually decided that I wanted to really purchase my first kit and do a home brew. I was just nervous about it. I'd done a lot of reading online and I saw that it could be dangerous. And I saw some stories about, oh, I got a SCOBY from a friend and it ended up making me sick and all this stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that I build confidence in you guys, kind of know what to look out for, and everything in order for you to get started on your first batch. Also, it saves you lots of money, which is very nice. So there's a couple of options that you can do in order to get started. The first option, which is what I did, is I just bought a starter kit online. I didn't want to not have one of the items just be missing something and feel like I wasn't doing it right. And B, I also just found it to be a little bit easier for my starting. I didn't know anybody who brewed kombucha, so I thought it'd be easier than just doing all the research myself. So what I did is I got online, I ended up ordering it from a website called Kombucha Camp. And it was a very good website. It came with your jar that you need, the tea, the sugar, a thermometer, your pH test strips, and then also how you brew. And then, yeah, basically came with everything I needed. The things it didn't come with were like a funnel. There were a few miscellaneous things that I needed to get started for my second bottling, but it gave me a week or two. It gave me all the information of what I needed, and then I had like an extra week to get that stuff so I could start my second fermentation. Your second option is obviously going to be collecting everything yourself from the store or from friends or growing your own SCOBY. So just as kind of what you feel comfortable with. I'm hoping that after this training, you guys feel more comfortable with collecting your own things. Maybe you buy your SCOBY from an online source, or if you feel extra comfortable, you can make your own. That is something I've not done yet, but I do plan on attempting it soon, just out of curiosity. I want to see how that process goes as well. In my last training, I went over how healthy kombucha is for you, kind of where it got started and the background on it. So it does have the probiotics, it's good for your gut, and has also been known for a few healing benefits. So on the next page, I have a checklist. Literally, you can check off what you need when you get it. Once you have all the supplies, theoretically, you'll be ready to start your first homebrew. So I just thought this would be nice for you guys to have. Check it off as you grab your things. And so what you'll need is a gallon glass jar. You need plain, non-flavored tea, organic cane sugar, a stick-on thermometer, which is this. You guys can all look at this after I'm finished with my training and ask any questions as well. A syringe. This is used for tasting your tea. The thermometer, it has to be a certain temperature. That's used for reading your temperature, making sure everything's all good. A notebook and a pen. I forgot to grab my notebook, but I do have the pen that I use just to label my bottles. I like to label what the tea is, what kind of tea I used, and the date that I started it, so I know how many days I'm brewing. Once you kind of create your own recipe per se, based off of the tastes of what you like, whether you like it sweeter, whether you like it tarty, more tart, and stuff like that. You'll need pH test strips that you can get at a restaurant store. They have those as well as the syringe. You get those at the restaurant store. And those are just, your kombucha is supposed to be at a certain pH, and just making sure that it's in that range so that it's safe to drink is why you use the pH test strips. I don't use mine too often anymore just because I'm fairly comfortable. I've been doing it for a while now, so I just go by the smell and the smell of it. If it's ever questionable, then I definitely do use my pH test strip. You'll need a measuring cup. I just use one of those. I've also used I have a jar that I have marked off what my measurements are. So when you're making your tea, you have a certain amount of water that you're supposed to put with that, and so I've just marked that off so I can use like a big cup rather than just, using a 1 cup measuring cup, pouring in my water and stuff like that. You'll need a rubber band. This is going to be for the cotton cloth that's going to go on top of your kombucha as it is brewing. You will need airtight bottles. Airtight meaning that it's got some sort of a seal on it so that oxygen is not getting into it. You'll need a pot for boiling your kombucha. And then you will also need a cutting board. This is just miscellaneous if you want to cut up your fruit. If you already have juice that you want to put in or something like that, you won't necessarily need a cutting board. So on the next page, we're going to go over a few keywords. This is pretty basic. There is a first fermentation and there is a second fermentation. And listed under the first fermentation, it takes anywhere from 7 to 15 days. Like I said earlier, it just depends on what you like. And then I've listed what you need. You need your tea, your sugar, your measuring cup, your SCOBY with the starter juice, your thermometer, your notebook and pen for recording things, your pH test strips, your rubber band, your cotton cloth, your pot for boiling, your syringe, and your distilled vinegar. I don't think I went over this on the last list. Distilled vinegar I use for sanitizing everything out. I generally just add it in with a little bit of water, swirl it around, let it sit for a little bit, and then give it a rinse off. It's just making sure everything's sterile. If it's not in a sterile environment and it grows mold or it gets bad, you can get sick. So it's just very important making sure it's sterile. And then the second fermentation, which is the flavoring of your tea, and that's also when it gets fizzy. I don't know how many of you guys have tried it. I think most of you have, yeah. But that's when it gets the fizzy aspects to it. And so that you'll need your airtight bottles, you'll need your funnel for pouring, you'll need your fruit and spices or spices for flavoring, you'll need your pH test strips again, and you'll need your measuring cup and your cutting board. So on the next page, we've kind of gone over everything that you need. This is a list of everything you may need. Now I'm going to go over some questions you guys may have. After I'm all finished, if you have any additional questions, I would be happy to answer them. So one big question is, where do you get your SCOBY from? Well, as I said earlier, you can order it online, you can get it from a friend, you can make it yourself. I've not yet done that yet, but I plan on doing it soon. It just kind of depends. If you're going to get it from a friend, make sure that they've been brewing for a long time. They know that they're using a sterile environment. It's just very important. If you're going to get it online, read the reviews. Sometimes there's people online sending SCOBYs out that aren't good. Once again, you don't want to pay for a SCOBY that's bad. I don't think they're much money. I think they're $5 or $10. So if you do happen to get a bad one, it wouldn't be terrible to get a new one. It's just easier. And then, yeah, the second question we get a lot is there a particular brand of tea you should use? No, you can use any kind of tea, any brand. They do say that you shouldn't be using a tea that already has flavor in it, just because it sometimes is harder for the SCOBY to grow in that sort of environment. But I usually use a mixture of green tea and black tea. You can use loose leaf tea if you have a little tea holder. You can use yerba mate. You can mix yerba mate with a regular tea. You can't do just fully yerba mate because it's actually not tea. It comes from a different plant. So that would be the one thing. But yeah, you can experiment, and that's the great part. Like maybe you're not a huge black tea fan and you really like green tea. It's gonna make your kombucha different every time. You can always change up the taste, and that's really cool. So yeah, another question is, what if you don't have everything on the list to start the brew? You don't technically need everything on the list to start the brew, but it does make your brewing process a lot easier. Obviously, you need the tea, the sugar, you need your thermometer, and your jugs, and your cloth with a rubber band on the top. Yeah, so it just kind of depends. You don't need everything. I would have everything. It just makes everything easier. Can you substitute anything on the list? A lot of people are like, organic cane sugar, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, you can substitute. You can substitute regular sugar. It just is, it's whatever you like, basically, is what you can substitute. Some people substitute honey. It's raw honey you have to use, unfiltered. And then there's different amounts of measurements on the sugars if you want to substitute. Another thing I've heard about honey is that, again, it kind of affects the SCOBY's culture, so you may want to have a couple of SCOBYs and do a little experiment before you really full on start brewing with your honey, because it could possibly kill your SCOBY, and then you wouldn't have a batch. And then what else can your funnel. So I started off with this funnel. The package didn't come with a funnel. This is actually an oil funnel. And then when I realized it was a little hard, I decided to get this. You can substitute your airtight bottles. So I started off with these bottles. They're cute. They're a little bit hard to pour your kombucha into. So then I switched off. I started using some of just the bottles of kombucha. It's got an airtight filter on it. It worked great. You can also use growlers, or you can use canning jars with the rubber airtight filter on those as well. There's tons of jars you can use. Any of that works. You can switch out all sorts of things. So that is a plus. And then the last question that we get a lot is, what if you bottle your kombucha? What if you do not bottle your kombucha when it is ready? That is okay. If you happen to get super busy and you think, oh gosh, I can't bottle my kombucha, it's been 16 days, this is going to be really bad. It's not bad. Kombucha will sit and just lay there for 30 days to 2 months. But you may have to feed it, and that's just adding a mixture of the tea and sugar, because it feeds off of the tea. So I believe that is all pretty much of what you will need to get started. Yeah. All right.